Well, good evening and welcome to CAF Warbird 2. Joining me from Airbase Georgia is Joel Perkins. Joel, you are the leader of the pack down there in the Atlanta area, and glad to have you here. We're going to talk about one of the airplanes that you have in your fleet, but just for the audience sake, what aside from the P-51 Mustang we'll talk about tonight, what other aircraft do you have in the hangar down there?
We are very fortunate to have quite the inventory. So we have a P-63, a Dauntless, a T-6, a Corsair, which is a crowd favorite, of course, a T-34. We've got a P-47 under restoration, a Stearman under restoration. And I know I've missed one, and of course the P-51. We have quite the inventory, very blessed to have them, and more blessed to have the volunteers that maintain them.
I was just going to bring that up. To take care of all those different aircraft, you have to have a large number of volunteers who show up not only just on the weekends, but throughout the week to help keep everything moving.
Exactly. Our published work days are Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Yeah, those are just published work days. You'll find people there every day. There's always something going on from the machinist in the machine shop who are to me, the local artisans. They come in through the side door, they don't say anything, they make these beautiful parts and they leave. And then we've got our maintenance personnel are second to none. All our training staff, our ride staff, our education staff, facilities rental, it takes an entire village to keep the place running. And, you know, it's quite expensive, as you know. We average $1,500 to $1,700 a day just to keep the doors open, and that's without, you know, something breaking. That's just the facility itself. So it's quite an effort.
It certainly is. We're going to talk about the effort to keep Red Nose in the air, and we'll come back at the end and let folks know how they can not only support the P-51, but all the other aircraft that you have, and we'll also talk about where they'll be able to see some of these aircraft, especially in the next couple of weeks. So stand by for that. We're going to talk to some of your key volunteers in just a moment. And this is Warbird Tube episode number 207. And as I said, we're going to talk about the P-51 Mustang known as Red Nose, the very first aircraft that was part of the CAF fleet. And we'll dive in, we'll do a deep dive on the P-51 tonight. Now, whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a loyal Warbird Tube fan, we're thrilled to have you with us. Now, if you enjoy what you see tonight, please spread it across your favorite social media platforms. We do appreciate it. Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about the CAF, our events, our aircraft, the tours, and the aircraft that will be on tour all over the country, just visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, the P-51 Mustang is always a hot topic when we talk about Mustangs, and we've talked about several over the years, including Red Nose. But if you have any questions about the Red Nose, the history of the airplane, how Airbase Georgia takes care of it or operates it, just type those in the chat box. We'll try to answer them either while we're talking about the airplane tonight or before we sign off. So again, just type those questions in, and we'll get them answered for you. Right now, we're going to move things along with our resident historian, Brad Pilgrim, and Brad's going to talk a little bit about the history of the very first aircraft that became a part of the CAF fleet. Joining us now is CAF's resident historian, Brad Pilgrim, also a Hall of Fame member. Congratulations again on that. Brad, going to get a little background on the very first airplane to join the CAF fleet, and that is P-51 Red Nose.
Yeah. It started out with Lloyd Nolan, as I've covered in the history stories before. Lloyd Nolan, during the war, was an instructor pilot stationed stateside because of bad eyesight. He always wanted to be a fighter pilot, like most people did back then. And after the war, he bought a P-40 in 1951, and he flew that around for a little while, but he really, really wanted a Mustang. And so he sold the P-40 and intended to flip that money into a Mustang. But right about the time he was doing that, the military started recalling all the Mustangs that were being surplused in order to send them to Korea. And so he kind of just lost out. He was out of a P-40 and no available Mustangs. And in 1957, there came one available over in San Antonio. They found it for $2,500. and he didn't have the money to buy it. That was, nearly twice what he had paid for his P40, and he said he just couldn't afford it. So he got a couple of his crop dusting and farming buddies, him, Billy Turnbull, Billy Dre, Royce Norman, and C.W. Butler. They all went in together and bought this airplane for $2,500, and it did include some spare parts. They thought it was a pretty good deal. And they bought the airplane and did some work to it. It had, I think it was rudder damage. It had been ran into or something there on the field, but nothing major. But I think the guy actually threw in an extra rudder or something. But they fixed the airplane and brought it down to Mercedes, and that was the official beginning of the then Confederate Air Force, because it hadn't been incorporated or anything. And one night, as the story goes, around this 1957 timeframe, they all went outside one morning to go fly the Mustang, and somebody had painted the word Confederate Air Force down the side of it as a joke about them rebelling against the government's policy of destroying all these airplanes, and the joke stuck. And that's where the name came from, and that's where the first CAF airplane came from. This is what they first looked like when they first got it. It was silver. They put the red on it. It was just bare metal. They put the red on it, and some of the pictures, and when it's in this scheme, the Kodachrome slides or whatever, they fade out, and the red sometimes looks fluorescent orange and looks very weird, but that was actually red wingtips, tail, and spinner. And then later on, they went to another paint scheme, which became what we called the CF house colors. You can see right there that orange color on the Bearcat tips and everything. That it was red. It's just faded out because of the Kodachrome slides of finishing rubber. It's neat to see the old crop dusters behind there. And that was one of the first Bearcats they bought. People remember they bought two Bearcats because somebody came along and said, yeah, the Mustang's great, but the Bearcat's a better airplane. So they bought a Bearcat so they could race them and find out. And that's when they really got going on collecting airplanes. So this is a very early picture. This is probably 1958 is probably when that picture is. And there it is. You can see the Confederate Air Force painted on the side of it there, and still the weird orange color because of the Kodachrome. But I'm sure that was repainted, because I'm sure the first time it was done probably under the influence of some liquid late in the evening. It was probably done with a paintbrush or a can of shoe polish or something. But this is how it appeared for a year or so until they went on to the new paint scheme.
Is there any record of why they decided the red nose, red tail, red tips?
No, my suspicion is that someone had a can of red paint.
Yeah.
I really think that's probably what it was, because so many things back then, because they didn't have a budget to do anything. Right. Like the gray uniforms that started out, people, well, why do they wear gray uniforms? It actually didn't have anything to do with the Confederacy. It had to do with the fact that a lot of these guys wore rental work clothes, working in crop dusters and as mechanics, and a lot of those rental work clothes were those gray polyester clothes that were, they still make them today for work uniforms and stuff like that. This is down there in Mercedes. You can see the building behind that. That was the second story of the building up there where they used to have parties and everything. But that's the first Bearcat and the red-nosed Mustang with the strangely faded colors again. You can even tell the barrel behind it is faded out.
Yep.
So, but I swear it really was red. And this was the second iteration of it. You can see the Confederate Air Force has changed a little bit on the back, and then it's got the flag right in front of it. And then it's got the strap on the tail. And that's a pretty neat picture. That was in a lot of magazines when the CAF first became known. This was the picture that kind of was the first publicity shot for the CAF.
Do you remember what year this one is?
That's probably 1958. It's probably when that is. Late 57, very early 58 would be my guess. It looks like Lloyd Nolan flying it. This is the main color that people think of prior to the military paint job. This is what you call CAF house colors. And most of the airplanes we had were some version of red, white, and blue. And this is another one that I suspect was done. The Thunderbirds flew around in red, white, and blue paint schemes. And whenever they started doing air shows with the CF airplanes, I think the thought was we need to look like an air show team and need to, look a little more professional or whatever. So people didn't paint Warbirds in military colors at that time. In fact, we didn't really start doing it until 1972 is when we really went whole hog into painting them. Paint's expensive, and to put on custom paint is really expensive, even back then. So this was the paint scheme that it flew around in for several years. You see the large N number down the side of the fuselage, something nobody would do today. That's marked like a civilian airplane, and you wouldn't do that today unless you had a true civilian airplane.
Right. Nice crop duster in the background as well.
Yeah, that's a Stearman sitting
Mhm.
back there. I'd look that in number up someday and see whose Stearman that is if it's still around. At least the red's not faded out here.
Yep, there you
So
go. Yeah, or faded out on the mobile gas truck.
that's true. That's true.
Old logo on there too.
Yeah.
Is this Mercedes as well?
I don't know where that's at. I've had this slide. I got this slide probably 10 years ago. I think I bought it off of eBay, and it didn't have. There's about 20 different slides over the years of different airplanes, and only a few were CAF, and that just happened to be in there. But I don't. It looks flat. Could be West Texas. Who
It
knows?
could be.
Yeah. This is another publicity photo, and you see it's a little bit different iteration of the paint scheme. It has some of the sponsors' names under the window up there, and it has the flag on the tail fin. But it's in formation with the Bearcat, and this was another publicity photo that I don't know. My suspicion is Purnell Photographers down in Harlingen took this picture. Jack Purnell was a local photographer there, and he did a lot of work for the CAF, a lot of volunteer work and free pictures and stuff like that. And he took the majority of the early days pictures that I've ever found. And so I suspect he took this one, but this one wound up, they sold it at air shows and stuff like that. And at the little gift shop they had, this is one of the press photos that they passed out as well. So there's about 6 photos in this series that had other different CF airplanes in it as well, different sides of the Mustang, and also have Super 8 video footage that was filmed from a T6 of this very formation with the airplanes trying to stay in formation with the T6, but that film's not in the greatest shape. This is down in Harlingen. When they first moved there, you see the P40 back there. It's the same P40 we have today. It was red back then, bright red, and you can see the Mustang still basically in the same scheme it was earlier. But this is, I forgot what year we bought the P40, but this is probably 1962, 63, I would have to guess. I'm not certain when we bought the P40. I should know that, but I don't. This is the first military paint scheme, and I think this was probably chosen because they already called the plane red nose because of the red paint that they had on it, and they probably, as they did back in those days, probably found a picture of it in a magazine or a book somewhere and went, oh, that's neat, and painted it. I think it's the fourth fighter group. Yeah, 4th Fighter Group paint, loosely based. It's not done right in that as far as an authentic paint scheme. But and see, it's still got the big N number up on the tail and everything like that. But that was the first military scheme, and I think this picture is 1972. Looking at the airplanes in the background that are in military paint, I think this is probably 72 at the earliest. This is later on when it was repainted. This is after went to the Airbase Georgia in 2002, I believe it was, and the airplane was restored over a couple of years. Prior to about 1993, the airplane had never really been restored. It had just been flown, changed engines, fly it some more. It was pretty long in the tooth, and they went through and did a lot of work to it and put a second set of controls. It's not a full TF-51, but it had the ability to have a second set of controls to check out fighter pilots in it. And that's when it got a freshening and up and everything. And then it went to Airbase Georgia in 2002, and they've maintained it ever since then.
And it's amazing, through all of these pictures, it still has the same N number.
It does, yeah. N numbers don't tend to change very often unless it's a vanity thing, and I don't mean vanity in a bad way, but like the Thunderbolt, the CF's N model Thunderbolt for years was November 47 Tango Bravo. Until we got That's All Brother C-47, and they decided they needed 47 Tango Bravo. And so the Thunderbolt, after a lifetime of having an N number, now that N number has been given to another airplane for vanity reasons. I didn't agree with that, but nobody asked me either. So,
where is this picture taken?
That is at Military Aviation Museum out in Virginia Beach. That's the museum started by Jerry Yeagan and currently ran by our friend and fellow CF member Keegan Chetwin.
Yeah. And have
very
you got
nice
a year
museum.
A year on this one?
No, I don't know what year that one is. I'm not really sure. It's hard to say. After a while, it never changed a whole lot.
Right. So, Brad, any final thoughts or insights into the very first airplane to join the CAF fleet?
You know what? This airplane, as I've said before, Ed Maloney out in Chino had bought a Mustang before us, but not very long before us. He never really intended to have a flying museum, or I don't think he thought it was a possibility at the time. So he bought it for a museum piece. Lloyd and those guys bought this airplane for the purpose of starting a flying museum. Well, they bought it to go have a good time, but that is what, morphed into this idea of we can educate people about this and save more airplanes. So this very airplane was the impetus for starting what we are today, of gathering up 180 airplanes, and it started with this one right here. And I think it's pretty cool that we've still got it after all these years. And the markings are a little different. I wish it was back the way it was in '72, just for I like that look. But to basically look like the same airplane, and people know when they see that airplane, they know it's the CAF's. It's synonymous with this organization. And the Airbase Georgia people take really good care of it. A lot of really neat people have flown this airplane over the year. Chuck Yeager flew this airplane. Bob Hoover flew this airplane. Ronnie Gardner, Rick Shark. The list of sponsors on this airplane over the years is amazing. And the guys that fly it and maintain it today at Airbase Georgia really do a great job with it. I'm just thrilled that it's still around and still operating and still carrying the CAF banner.
Of course, Brad is the keeper of all things CAF. I'm sure you have probably quite a bit of information that goes back in the files on this airplane.
Yeah, while getting ready to do this webinar the other day, I was looking for something else the other night, digging through my filing cabinets, and this right here, these folders, this is how much stuff I have just on Red Nose alone, included in here. And I haven't even looked through most of this stuff. I haven't looked through all of it. There's the original list of all the spare parts that came with the airplane, and personal correspondence between the original 5 guys that owned it and buying each other out and everything like that. It's pretty cool, some of the stuff I have. It still just amazes me, some of the stuff I find from time to time.
Famous last words, while looking for something else.
That's exactly what I was doing. I literally was looking for something else.
Well, Brad, any final thoughts on Red Nose?
No, I mean, it's like I say, it's just it carried the flag of the CAF since 1957, and is probably not the most well-known or most famous P-51 in existence, but people know who owns it when they see it, and it really was one of the very first Warbird Mustangs, and it is literally the airplane that started this organization. If Lloyd Nolan hadn't thought of it, somebody else would have, but Lloyd Nolan's foresight of getting 5 guys together to buy this airplane is basically what started this hobby that we're all so lucky to participate in on various levels. Indeed.
Well, Brad, we will check in with you again, especially if you find something else that you weren't looking for when you were looking for something else.
Someday I'm going to find what I'm looking for, and everyone, it's going to be amazing.
It will be. Brad, thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Well, joining us now from Airbase Georgia, if we can get Philip turn his camera on. There he is. Well, so Brad took the story of Red Nose from 1957 up until the time it came into your possession at Airbase Georgia. So tell us a little bit about how that process took place to actually get the airplane to move to Georgia.
Well, first I want to thank Brad because he's a wealth of knowledge of the CAF and everything he knows about these airplanes, their history, where they've been. I mean, it's fascinating to always listen to him. It's always so entertaining to listen to him. It's ridiculous. So it's a hard act to follow. We'll do the best we can here. So I joined the CAF in about 2001. I joined the Airbase Georgia then, and we had the flying PT-26, C-45, and SDD Dauntless. And 6 months later, Red Nose was put up for assignment by the General Staff. And so I went to Jake Chiron, who's our wing leader then. I was like, hey, Jake, let's go get that Mustang. Let's bring it here. He looked at me and goes, man, we have enough money in the bank for 2 months because I have no money for it. And I go, don't worry about it. I got it. So luckily, the staff really believed in my vision and the scope of the project, and I assembled a great team around me. The guys who, it's funny, go get ready for this. I found all the original documentation of Red Nose and all our proposals and everything that was written. And the proposal was written by 3 aerospace engineer doctorates that were getting their doctorate at Georgia Tech. And they were all of our wing members. So I went to them and said, hey guys, I really need help with this. My writing skills are 0 at best. And these guys go, no problem, we're on it. And so they turned in this doctorate thesis proposal for the airplane, including a demographic study of Atlanta, growth patterns, everything you could think of about the Atlanta area and the Peachtree City area. And then what we did was I got home from work and I got our roster. And I started at the first person on our roster and started calling everybody every night on the roster. It took me about 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks of just begging for money for people. And we were able to raise about $175,000 doing that for the airplane. And we ended up where once the guys are done writing the proposal, we submitted it to the assignment committee. And then I called each one of the assignment committees, begged, pleaded, borrowed, stole with them, answered questions, did whatever it took to get the airplane. And then I called everybody in the general staff and did the exact same thing again. And time after time, they were just blown away by the amount of A&Ps that were ready to volunteer, their proposal itself, the depth of our pilots, just the whole package itself. We were so lucky to be surrounded by a wonderful team. Then what happened was the airplane was assigned to us in 2002-ish, and that was the easy part. The airplane was sitting in Midland, Texas, taken apart with a blown engine on it and no money and debt. So Stan Music, J.B. Stokely, Stan actually bought an airplane and transferred Dixie, we were Airbase Georgia members, back and forth. And he became like a flying taxi service. And he spent 30 days out in Texas. I spent 20. Jim Buckley spent another 15 to 20 days out there. And so we did, I think, 5 to 6 round trips out to Texas, driving, flying, driving across the country, picking up parts. And it was just like I said, it's a team effort that it was an honor to be a part of, really. And Stan ended up bringing the airplane back for the Airbase Georgia's one of their first air shows, or one of the air shows we had. And he brought it in Friday of the air show and landed it. And we immediately started selling rides. For a 20-minute ride, when we got the airplane, was $650. And Yvonne will speak on to what it is now, but I mean, $650 is nothing. And ever since then, it's been a great part of our stable of aircraft. We're very lucky to be, have the original, as some of our friends say, the OG Warbird sitting in our hangar.
You mentioned calling everyone on the roster, and so did the money that you raised come completely from the airbase or from the wing, or were there outside donors, local sponsors, or anything that helped?
No, actually, what the assignment committee and the general staff really liked about it was we had about 45 to 50 donors. Some people gave us $50, some people gave us $10,000. They wanted to buy the airplane, of course. But we had a deep bench of donors ready to jump on board, ready to donate money, ready to care and take care of the airplane. So that's one of the things I really enjoyed most about it. It all came from internal. And I think that really showed the general staff that our wing wanted this airplane. They wanted a piece of history sitting in our hangar. They wanted to be part of it, which is exciting.
Absolutely. What were some of the, aside from the monetary challenges and the distance between Atlanta and Midland, what were some of the other challenges that you ran into getting the airplane back home?
It was literally parts and pieces, because when we got out there to Midland and started assessing everything, it was, I think the radiator tubes are over there in that building. I think the generator for the engine's over there in this building. This is over here. And it became just a huge organizational process. I think it took 4 or 5 of us of trying to call different shops throughout the United States just to find parts and pieces we needed for the airplane. So I can't, those guys, Stan, JB, Buckley, Paul, Hunt, they spent 30 days in the summer of Texas sitting in a Midland hangar. And as you well know, that hangar gets 110, 115, just sweating day in and day out trying to put that airplane back together. And they weren't 8-hour days. It was, we were out there before the sun came up, worked all day long, and went to bed after the sun went down. So it was long days, but it's been a great privilege and great airplane. And I think it really took our wing to the next level, and it built a team around it that I can't even fathom today. We'll talk to some of the people who maintain it and some of the people who fly today. And I managed the airplane for probably 15 years, air shows, pilots, and everything. And 2 or 3 years, 4 years ago, somebody else wanted an answer, so I gave it up. And she's been doing a rock star job of taking care of that airplane. You'll meet her later.
Okay. As the airplane came online, it became a part of the Airbase Georgia, Dixie Wing at that time. How has it impacted the organization within the community?
Well, as you will know, any frontline fighter has the ability to really draw a crowd. And not taken away from the PT-26, we have the SBD, and we had the C-45 at that period of time. But when you hear a Merlin crank up, or you see the airplane fly over, it draws a crowd. And so just from the community aspect, it really brought in a whole new bench of members because they wanted to be part of a growing organization, you know, bigger toys, faster toys, but let's also look at not only the toy aspect, but the education process of it as well. Our mechanic has a great story. You'll talk to him a little while too, of a ball turret. We have a ball turret that he actually got working. And you need to ask Rodney about the family members that were put in the ball turret. He has one of the most unbelievable stories under the sun of that. I know it's not about the Mustang, but it's just the community involvement drawing towards us, and our assets do that. And our people, I always tell everybody, the airplanes draw people to the CAF, but the people are what keep the people in the CAF.
Absolutely. Any memorable experiences at air shows or doing ride stops with veterans, community members that stand out for you?
Okay, so I was in Midland, Texas when World War II vets were still around, and you always knew a World War II vet because he would stand about 15 feet away from the airplane and kind of slowly walk around. And this one particular gentleman had his walker. And at that point in time, we weren't letting anybody in the airplane just because they would step on stuff and break stuff, and it got really expensive. So I walked up to the gentleman. I go, "Hey, you know, how you doing? I'm Philip. I'm with a P-51 Red Nose. Do you have any questions about it?" I started a brief conversation with him. And he was slowly working his way around with the walker. And I go, "Do you have any history with the airplane?" He goes, "Yeah, I flew him in World War II." And I go, "Sir, the airplane's yours. You are more than welcome to sit in." That dude took his walker, put it inside of him, pretty much ran over to the airplane. And the way you get on the Mustang is you put 1 foot on the tire, 1 foot on the cross brace, 1 foot on the wing. Then I kind of shimmy up the airplane and then get in the cockpit. That dude put 1 foot on the tire, 1 foot on the wing, missed the cockpit and smashed off the back of the wing to the ground. And there's a collective gas going through the entire cabin. And I was like, "I've killed a vet." Before anybody could say anything, he had jumped up, ran around the wing again, 1 foot on the tire, 1 foot on the wing, next foot in the cockpit. And I was just like, "Oh, he's still alive. We're doing okay here." So I went up the other wing and I spent, 2 or 3 minutes chatting with him. I did not want to bother him a lot. And I said, "Sir, the airplane's armed, fueled. Please have it back in 30 minutes. And then closed the canopy and walked off. And for 10 minutes, he sat up there and you could see him. He was 19 again. He was in the airplane. He was part of it again, reliving his youth. And he kind of looked at me and I realized he wanted to get out. So I got back up there, opened the canopy, and I said, "Sir, let me please help you get out. Let me help you get out." So the dude, I was on the right-hand side. He stood up, got out, fell off the front of the wing and smashed into the concrete again. And I was just going, "Oh no." He got up, walked back over to his walker, picked it up, and was 85 years old again. So that one period of 15 minutes, he was 19 years old, and it was unbelievable to watch that happen. And so it's those moments where you really make the history connect that we do this. All of us do it. That's why you're sitting here. That's why I'm sitting here right now.
Exactly. And that's a perfect segue to bring Yvonne in and to talk about the Current Rides program. Yvonne Hayley is also with the Airbase Georgia, and is she the one who kind of took over for you, Philip?
Yes, sir, she did. She has taken over, and I mean, taken that airplane to heights I can't even imagine. Real proud to have her do it.
Well, Yvonne, how did you get involved with the airbase?
So it was probably about 2011. My husband's a pilot, and he always had a passion for warbirds, and introduced me through that. So he found Airbase Georgia, and it just led from there. And at this point, we have kids that are older, so I could get a lot more involved, and absolutely love it. Such a passion.
Good. How did you decide that you wanted to move into the rides area for the Mustang?
I don't know. I remember when I came on, Jerry Robinette was also running rides for all the different airplanes, and for some reason, I just always had this desire that one day that's something I thought was just really a neat job to do, and could maybe have that opportunity. And 2 years ago that presented itself, and it's been amazing ever since.
What's the most amazing aspect of it? I mean, there's got to be a lot of details that go into it, trying to keep schedules together, people on time, and everything else. But
Yeah,
what's the reward, the payoff for you?
I think to me, as Philip was saying, we don't at this point get to see veterans as much. I've had a few. We had one back in March that trained in a PT-19. We went down to Douglas, Georgia with ours, and his son brought him from an hour away, and he was almost in tears just to get to see the airplane. But then more of what we see now are family members, and so it was their dad, it was their uncle, and just getting them connected. You know, it's such a sentimental thing for them, or a bucket list for someone that's just dreamed of this for years. And so it's funny, we kind of joke, like sometimes you paint yourself to realize like you're really a part of this. You're really actually making this happen for somebody that is just so special. That's the reward.
Now, do you deal exclusively with the Mustang, or do you book rides for all the aircraft?
All the aircraft.
Okay. So I understand you have a Warbird weekend coming up this weekend. A little friendly competition as to who has the most riders so far.
Yeah, so we have 5 airplanes that we do rides in, so they'll all go up this weekend. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out between all 5. Some pre-sale more, some will end up with walk-ups, but Atlanta's a great area to pull people in from.
Now, you won't be at your home base. You're moving to DeKalb Peachtree for the flights this weekend.
Right. Yep, that's correct.
A little closer to the metropolitan Atlanta.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us what goes into let's concentrate on the Mustang. What goes into the briefing and that brings once the person gets there and they're ready to go? Walk us through the briefing and up to the flight.
Okay. So typically before they arrive, we have them do their waiver, but we actually have people that sometimes it's a complete surprise. And a lot of times it's wives for husbands, but it's also, I love it when it's a husband who bought it for a wife. And so we'll tell them, look, tell them they're coming, we're a flying museum, tell them they're coming for a tour. And so they'll actually show up and have no idea that they're going to ride. So, at that point we'll do the waiver there. And then we take them out to the airplane, and the pilots provide a safety briefing, talking about how to work the canopy, how to work the seat belt, what you do and don't touch inside the cockpit, just all the different aspects of trying to make sure that they're safe. The pilots talk to them and about some of the historical, kind of find out what do they know already. Usually a lot of times they're history buffs, and talk with them about the airplane and do some education there.
Very good. What kind of flights do you have for the Mustang? Is it just one size fits all, or are there different options?
So there's different time limits that people can do. So there's 20-minute, 30-minute, and 40-minute. So it just depends on what fits their budget as to how long they want to stay, because that's all, as we say, all in the air time. It's actually about an hour for the full experience, but that's how long they get to go up in that time.
Yeah. I think Philip mentioned $650 for the very first rides back in 2002. That's probably gone up a little bit by now.
It has, yeah, quite a bit.
What are the prices?
So if you're at home and we haven't had to travel anywhere, it's about $2,000. And then if we've gone somewhere as far as like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin for the air shows up there, it goes up quite a bit more. So just trying to cover that cost, because it's quite a bit, and the whole team you have to take up there for running rides.
How do you determine where to make these different stops away from home base?
Probably depends on the requests that we've had. There's a lot of repeat. So Reading, Pennsylvania is a big one that we do. The Mid-Atlantic Air Museum has a big World War II weekend. That's coming up in a couple of weeks as well. That one we've gone to for years. So that's kind of a repeat. And then Oshkosh, Wisconsin is a big one that's a repeat. So that, and then just, I guess, what's feasible. For the airplanes, there's a cost in how far you go. So just looking at that to evaluate, does it make sense?
Is there a process you go through for requests? I mean, if somebody's watching this and says, hey, I have an air show in Georgia or Alabama or whatever, how can they request the airplane? How do they do that?
They can. So they just reach out to us. We actually have a team of air show coordinators, and they actually do that process. And then if it involves rides, then I'll handle the rides portion, but then the air show coordinators, they'll actually handle more processing. How far is it and pricing it, and all those different aspects.
If someone would like more information on how to book a flight, how can they find out more?
Yeah, so they can go on the website, and there's a link right at the top that says book a ride. They can even have an email. It goes to rides@airbasegeorgia.org. That's always monitored throughout the day. And then there's the phone number on the website as well. So glad to answer any questions on how to book a ride in any of the airplanes.
All right. Well, good luck this weekend with all the rides, and also at Reading in a couple of weeks, and then hopefully we'll see you in Oshkosh as well.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, right now we'd like to bring in Jeff Clark, who's one of the pilots of Red Nose, and Rodney Higginbotham, who has the the duty of trying to keep Jeff in the cockpit. Rodney is the crew chief for Red Nose. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Rodney, how long have you been with CAF?
I joined in 2003. I think it was October the 3rd.
All right. And how about you, Jeff?
I think I joined in the early 2000s, maybe 2003 or so.
Okay. Well, Rodney, let's start with the maintenance on Red Nose. What goes into just a normal sort of, if there is such a thing as a normal year for the Mustang? Obviously, you go through the annual first part of the year, and then what happens the rest of the year to keep it flying?
So after the annual, we do a service every 25 hours, and because with the oil change, and the biggest thing is we have to retorque the heads on the engine, and that's a pretty in-depth thing. You got to take the cams out, and when you do that, you got to retime the engine, and that was a big learning process.
Did you have piston engine experience before you started working on Red Nose?
No, I didn't. When I joined, I always had a part-time job as a machinist, and that's what I was doing when I joined. And the guy that was maintaining it before he left, and I just sort of I was helping on the SPD a little bit, and just sort of started working on the Mustang. And a couple years ago, I went and got my A&P license, and so now I get to work on the Mustang.
It was actually very fun watching Rodney's process of learning how to work on that Mustang, because he'd go through the 25-hour. In the first few, Rodney, we'd go do the mag check. It was a bit of a dice roll on whether it would work or not. But now, almost every time, that thing fires up and just purrs. He has got it down to a science.
And in fact, you had it fired up today, right?
Yes, we did. We just finished up a 25-hour on it, and I had actually adjusted the points and got them opened up too far, and it wouldn't run on the right mag. I'm like, so you just close them up, and everything went good.
Good. Well, you Jeff, you pointed out something very important about Airbase Georgia as well, as that is not only are you very welcoming and you've got a wide variety of volunteers, but there's also a learning process that goes in. I know we had talked a little while back about your Stearman restoration project, and how some folks who had no experience at all doing fabric covering had come in, learned how to do fabric covering, and now are passing that along as well. So Rodney, sort of the same scenario for you. You weren't an A&P, but now you are, and I think that's really one of the great aspects of Airbase Georgia. That's this learning, the feel that comes with the group.
Oh, sure. It's and there's a lot of guys, and the Warbird community is everybody knows each other, and the engine builder, different people, they're just a phone call away, and they're really helpful, and it's and there's still a wealth of knowledge at the hangar, and I can rely on them too, and so we're getting some more guys coming on board that's going to start helping on it also.
Very good. Do you collaborate with the other Mustang operators in the CAF about different challenges?
Well, actually, Tuskegee was just in the hangar last week and had a little hydraulic leak, and pulled inside, and 4 or 5 of us got over there and got it fixed, and yeah, we do make parts and help people help the other wings out also.
Yeah, not just for the P-51, but for like steering projects and things as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, your machine shop is well known within the CAF and probably within the Warbird communities as being a high quality operation.
Well, we had a guy that took a ride in a Mustang, and a couple of years later, he called up and he actually donated a Haas CNC milling machine. You know, it was computer operated and all that. And, you know, shoot, I got to learn how to work it. So now we got a Haas, you know, CNC milling machine.
Great. Working on an airplane that's 80 years old, and we're celebrating Red Nose's 80th birthday this year. Are there any challenges to finding parts for Mustangs?
You know, there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. I mean, you know, if it's just how much you want to pay for it, maybe. I don't know. It's, but really, you know, we can make a phone call and have one overnighted, you know, whether it's a fuel pump, hydraulic pump, you know, just about anything really.
Very good. Do you work on any of the other aircraft in the hangar, or are you really concentrate on the Mustang?
Oh, we all work on different airplanes. We got, you know, if we got something with the prop, we got, you know, the crew chief on the SBD. He's a real good prop guy, and you know, we got, you know, sheet metal guys and, you know, other machinists and. But no, we're just a big team. I mean, we all, you know, help each other out.
Yeah. About how many hours do you put on the Mustang each year?
Well, we think, Jeff, maybe 100.
Just under 200. I think it was about 190 last year.
Okay. Of course, you're blessed with a longer flying season than we are up here in the upper Midwest, so you have more of an opportunity to keep the airplane in the air.
Yeah.
And a lot of 24-hour inspections.
Yeah, true. That adds up as well. Jeff, how long have you been flying Red Nose?
You know, it's only been about 2 years that I've been on Red Nose. Before that, I started flying the Dauntless in about 2020. Started flying the T6 in about 2010. You know, when I first showed up at Airbase Georgia, I had like 10 hours tailwheel time, you know, a little bit of experience flying a decathlon, and it was really kind of a great opportunity to fly with folks like, you know, Jim Buckley put me in the back of his T6 with hardly any or in the front of his T6 with hardly any tailwheel time. So looking back at that, I can't hardly even believe he did that. But you know, it was an awesome opportunity to kind of learn from the masters and take that experience and ultimately put it to use myself.
And of course, that leads us to a question that comes up often: is like how do you get to fly a P-51 Mustang? Well, you have to start slow and work your way up. Now, do you have a formalized training program at Airbase Georgia?
Yes, to an extent. I mean, we do have a path that's documented in terms of, you know, coming in, starting with the smaller airplanes. You know, if you didn't have a lot of tailwheel time, you would start with something like the PP-19, where it's a light tailwheel, a good thing to kind of get experience on and start to build that tailwheel experience. You know, from there, the expectation is you would move up to something like a T6, which of course we've got our LT6 that is a good opportunity for people looking to do that. The CAF has a minimum of 100 hours T6 time before you're allowed to fly a fighter. Airbase Georgia has actually doubled that. So it's a pretty high barrier to entry to get 200 hours of T6 time. And that just gets you to the point where you can do your fighter checks. I mean, you know, the fighter checks, they're kind of renowned in the CAF as very, very challenging because it's done from the back seat of a T6 with two separate check pilots, both of which have very high expectations and standards. So then you've got to get through that. And, you know, at Airbase Georgia, that gets you not to the Mustang, but to the SBD. So you get to fly the SBD for a few years and, you know, prove that you're up to handling the higher horsepower and the slight more complexity over the T6. And then after that, you know, the door to the Mustang might open up when there's a need from the airbase. So it's a pretty prescriptive process, but everybody comes in with different experience. And, you know, if somebody comes in with tons of T6 time or tons of heavy Warbird time, you know, we're not going to say go to the PT if we need somebody to fly the other airplanes. So it just depends.
For you, what are the most challenging aspects to flying the Mustang compared to the T6?
You know, it's an interesting question. In a lot of ways, the Mustang, you know, it's actually somewhat easier in terms of like the landing, for example. The T6 runs around on you. You kind of know it's going to dart one direction or another. A Mustang doesn't. It usually tracks pretty straight. Sometimes it'll dart off on you, but it's not quite as bad as a T6 in that respect. For me, I think one of the more challenging things is, I don't have a lot of, I don't have any jet time. The Mustang is the highest performance aircraft that I've flown. And for me, going down and slowing down at the same time in a Mustang can be fairly challenging. You can't pull the engine back to idle. You're limited to, only going back to 26 inches. And in the Atlanta area, we've got Hartsfield-Jackson's Class Bravo airspace. So, under that, you're limited to 200 knots. So if you're trying to come down and descend, a Mustang is a slippery airplane. It really wants to go fast. So, getting to the point where you're thinking so far ahead that, I'm 50 miles away, but I need to start thinking about descending. You don't have that problem so much in a T6. It just takes a little bit of getting used to and planning for that idiosyncrasy of the airplane.
Rodney, I'll ask you, as we've mentioned, we've got an 80-year-old airplane. It's a P-51 Mustang. Do you, when you're working on it, obviously you're making sure that everything is running right, but do you ever have a moment or two where sort of the history and the gravity of the airplane just sort of takes over?
Yeah, I do. I found some logbooks the other day from 1957, and you go through and read the logbook entries and you read different things, and and it being the first CAF airplane, it's and I get to be a part of that, and then it being a P-51 Mustang. Most people love a Mustang, and you can watch YouTube videos on it, and it's just, it was a great airplane, and just I don't know, I just get to learn about it, and I think all the technology from back then, when you look at a drawing, I mean, everything was done with slide rules, and it's just it's amazing what they did back then. It's just it just is.
Yeah. And Jeff, same sort of question for you. I would think you've probably had some of those moments where the airplane, the spirit of the airplane kind of takes over.
Yeah, 100%. You think about this airplane, there's just so many layers of historical significance to it. First off, I don't think there's been a more beautiful aircraft ever created than a D model Mustang, right? Subjective, I'm sure some people would agree, some maybe not, but I think it's just a gorgeous aircraft, and it's awesome to be able to fly something that, is as cool as a Mustang. But, beyond that, obviously the historical significance from World War II, the ability to escort fighters, escort bombers all the way into Germany, and then fight the Luftwaffe once it got there, and the historical impact that had on World War II. But just the more recent history, first aircraft in the CAF, and knowing that Lloyd Nolan sat in the seat that you're sitting in, and I learned tonight that Chuck Yeager sat in the seat that I've been able to sit in, and that in and of itself is pretty awesome. And on top of that, it really is kind of the centerpiece and the heart and soul of Airbase Georgia. So you've got that layer of significance. It's a huge part of the revenue stream for the organization, and a lot of the membership really gravitates toward that airplane. But with all those layers of significance, there's also some layers of pressure. When you're flying the thing, and definitely keeps you on your best behavior, and you always want to operate it safely, and you don't want to be the guy that breaks it. So the other fun thing about flying a Mustang, when you first fire it up, if it's cold, the thing takes forever to warm up. So you're just sitting there, and it's a good opportunity to reflect on what you get to do, what you're about to go do, and make use of that time to think about how lucky you are.
Very good. Well, let's bring in everyone else on the panel. We'll fill your screen with the smiling faces from Airbase Georgia. There we go, Joel. Well, we started with you. I'll circle back with you. Listening to what you've heard tonight, I would think you're probably pretty proud of these volunteers that you have, and all the rest that are part of your organization.
Yeah, every time we do something like this, I learn something new. Philip had some new information, Jeff, Yvonne, and look, you guys don't see in the back end the hours and hours of dedication. They all have full-time jobs. They all have families. This is truly a passion. And I can't thank these guys enough. They show up all the time professionally, ready to serve, ready to tell the story. And you can't ask for any more than that.
It certainly is. About how many people do you have on your roster for Airbase Georgia right now?
So membership wise, the last count, and this number changes all the time, 532. Okay, so we have 532 members, and I like to differentiate members from volunteers. So we have a core group of 60 to 80 volunteers that are actively involved. It takes the members and the volunteers to make the place run. The members are all over the country, all over the world in some cases, and they're making donations. They're contributing in their own way, however they can. The volunteers are coming through the door, operating the aircraft, doing the maintenance, serving the facility, making the place run. So it takes everybody. Everybody's equally important. There's no one that's lesser, and I'm grateful for every one of them.
Yeah. Well, and that was the point I was going to reinforce, is that just because you're not in the Atlanta metro area, you can still support the airbase and become a member, and just simply by paying your dues and maybe making a donation or two, and you can be a part of this as well.
Absolutely. And for the people in the Atlanta area that have the ability to come down, you can be a visitor one day and on that same day join and cross the fence to actually serving and helping our other volunteers maintain these aircraft, maintain the facility. We've all, as a kid, I didn't come from an aviation family, so I was standing on the outside of the fence wondering how I was going to get in. With Airbase Georgia, you can come in as that visitor, join, and I guarantee you we'll put you to work, and you have hands on the aircraft, and we'll train you. I have so many people think, well, I'm not an A&P, well, I'm not a pilot, well, I'm not a machinist, well, I don't have any aviation experience. That's not a factor. What we want you to show up with is passion. We want you to be able to help us tell the story for those who can't. And I get choked up about that. But you can cross that barrier and come help us. And you could be part of the next generation to perpetuate that story, to make sure these aircraft don't show up in a museum where they never make another sound. I think that would be tragic.
That's one of the great things about CAF is that I can't remember, and I'll mess up the quote, and I can't remember who said it, but they said, you go to a museum and the airplanes are cold and quiet and sometimes dusty. And with CAF, they're loud, they're noisy, they have smells, but that's the way we like it.
Yeah. Where else can you get that full experience? You can read a book, but until you hear that Mustang fire up, until you hear that Corsair cough, I mean, it's not real.
Yeah. We're talking about the 80th birthday of Red Nose. Do you have a party planned? Is there cake?
There are rides. Yes,
Even
there are
better.
rides. Come celebrate the 80th by buying a ride.
There you go. Very good. If someone would like more information about about Airbase Georgia, what's your website address?
Airbasegeorgia.org, and Georgia is spelled out, and you can easily reserve a ride through the website.
All right. Any final thoughts from our crew tonight? First of all, thank you for spending time with us and sharing your insights. But any final thoughts? Philip, you always have a thought.
I've pretty much said everything I have to say. It's an honor and privilege to be part of the CAF, and really people who are watching this, no matter where you are in the country, we have plains in Alaska, Seattle, California, the Northeast, the Midwest, the Texas. You pick a place, CF is there. So if you're interested in warbirds in any way, fashion or form, I mean, look at Jeff. Came in with 10 hours of flight time and payroll time. You might find the CAF's most prominent fighter. Look at Yvonne. Came in here 20 years ago and has taken over a wing with guides and organization. Same with Rodney. So I guess the point of the story is you don't have to have a ton of experience, just like Joel's saying. If you're passionate about airplanes and you're passionate about history, keeping this image, keeping these airplanes alive, come see us.
100%. Thanks, Philip.
There we go. And the passion shows through with all of you tonight. And again, thank you for being a part of it and help celebrate Red Nose's 80th birthday. Take a ride. Find out more and visit their website for all the details. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. We'd like to hear your thoughts on tonight's episode and any ideas you might have for a future topic. Feel free to drop us a line at media@cafhq.org. If you enjoyed the show tonight, please share it across your social media platforms. We do appreciate that. And if you subscribe on YouTube, make sure you click the bell icon. You'll get notifications when our new episodes are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss, wishing you blue skies and tailwinds, and have a great night.